So I'm going to be making a unicorn horn to go on the top of a unicorn cake. Now to make that, I have coloured some white fondant a peachy colour, because when my horn is dry I'm going to dust it with luster dust, a gold luster dust, and this kind of colour makes it look really nice under the gold luster. Just a bog standard skewer, the sort that you'd put your kebab on the barbecue, a wooden skewer, food safe and very handy for models. A sharp knife, and I'm going to be using a cake smoother, but if you haven't got one of those, don't panic. You don't need one, you can just use the flat of your hand. So to begin with, we're going to, I've added some gum tragacanth to this fondant already, just to make sure that it dries nice and hard, because obviously the unicorn horn will be standing more or less vertical on the cake, so we don't want it to droop or sag. So just get rid of any creases, as I usually do, by rolling with quite a bit of pressure in between my palms. And what we need, the basis of this unicorn horn, is a really long tapered sausage. So I'll just start that off between my hands rather, and then put it on the desk. And I'm going to keep this end quite nice and fat and try and get this one quite nice and thin. So just keep rolling until you've achieved that. Now we don't want this end that fat, because that will just look a bit silly. So just keep rolling it out, and this is where you can use your cake smoother just to make it a little bit sort of smoother rather than bumpy where your hands have been. But as I say, you can use the palm of your hand and just do your best to get it smooth. We're going to even out the texture a little bit once it's on the skewer anyway, so don't worry too much. Okay, let's start with that. So what I'm going to do is I start from the top of my unicorn horn. I know a lot of people start from the bottom, but I just find it easier to start from the top, and then you know where you are. So I'm going to just squidge this, for want of a more technical term, onto the end of my skewer, and then in a diagonal direction I'm just going to start twisting the fondant around, and I'm actually twisting the skewer rather than the fondant. So we'll just keep, as I say, we're going to move the skewer rather than the fondant. That just helps to keep the fondant nice, in a nice condition rather than cracking. And just keep twirling it round. Now if you get any little cracks like that, don't worry too much, just sort of try and push them together again with your fingers, but we are going to smooth that out a little bit more. I got interrupted by a phone call, so my fondant has gone a little bit drier than I would have liked for this, but just keep persevering. Just move it up a little bit, and you just go as far as you want to go to make it the length that you want it. Now mine's going on a 7-inch cake, so it doesn't have to be absolutely massive. In fact, I think we're probably coming to about where I want it to be. So just to finish it off, obviously there's still a tail. What I'm going to do is going to get my knife at right angles to my skewer and just start cutting that fondant off at a right angle so that it's got a flat bottom, if that makes sense. So you might just have to get right in underneath there just to take that off. Okay, so there we have a little unicorn horn with a flat bottom, and what I'm going to do is just really gently just roll it on the work surface just to sort of flatten it and bring it all together. It's still got the grooves, but it's a bit flatter. Now, as I say, I was interrupted and my fondant got a little bit dry, so you can see I've got some cracks on mine, and I'm just using my finger to smooth those out a little bit, because the heat of your finger just sort of softens the fondant and can bring it back together. Obviously you don't want to put too much pressure on, because that will ruin the look of the horn. So again, just roll it out, have a little play with it. So now you're left with obviously quite a lot of skewer at the end, which is great because, you know, obviously it depends on the depth of your cake as to how much skewer you need to stick into the cake. I'm not going to need that much, so I am going to have to cut that off, but that's absolutely fine. Better to have to cut it off than be left without enough skewer. So now I'm going to leave this on a foam mat to dry, overnight probably at least. And if you haven't got a foam mat, some baking parchment on a surface or some kitchen roll on a surface is absolutely fine. But do try and leave it to dry for as long as you possibly can. I think I'm putting this on a cake for 48 hours time, so it is going to have probably 36 hours or so to dry, and then I'm going to luster dust it with some gold and it'll look beautiful. So there we have it.